Japanese Grand Prix at Fuji, forever associated with 1976, James Hunt becoming world champion in the rain. It's still associated with rain, but for Hunt, Reid Hamilton. 3 races to go and they line up in World Championship order for this Japanese Grand Prix. Raikkonen qualifying 3rd, Alonso 2nd, but yesterday Hamilton produced a pole position lap worthy of Hunt and every other great champion.
This is the shot for pole then, as he goes for the line. Lewis Hamilton makes it! Pole position for Lewis Hamilton. The McLaren boys go mad. It's a massive, massive result for Lewis Hamilton.
Formula One returns to the Fuji Speedway for the first time in 30 years, bringing with it the very unreliable weather that's a trademark of the Japanese Grand Prix. But it remains a place where British motorsport history is made, even more so after Lewis Hamilton's performance yesterday. But now, can Fuji in the wet also give a huge boost to Lewis Hamilton's quest for a World Championship title in this, his rookie year? It was a challenge which seemed to be losing momentum over the course of the last 3 races. But yesterday in qualifying, it was Hamilton back to his absolute confident best. But Mark, that was stamp conditions yesterday. Today, it's really wet. What do you make of the weather we got today?
It's very difficult for the guys, and it's also difficult to see what they may do for the start. If the rain keeps coming down, Steve, there's an outside possibility that they may have to start behind the safety car. A lot of laying water out there. As we are at the moment, it's a little bit finer. It may start to just dry out, but big decision-making time.
Whichever way you look at it, and especially if they have to start behind the safety car, this pole position of Lewis Hamilton is looking better and better.
Crucial. Fantastic lap he did there, but so important now for this race. Obviously, if he gets off there cleanly, he's going to have the clear visibility. Everybody behind him, they're going to have to contend with all that spray coming off. And I pity the guys at the back of the grid. They'll be able to see virtually nothing.
Well, let's remind you that this is the first of 3 races that will decide the Drivers' Championship. Hamilton's lead has gone down to just 2 points as Fernando Alonso outperformed him in Turkey, Monza and Spa. And it means that Hamilton has to beat him in at least one of the 3 remaining races to keep his championship hopes alive. And then there's Raikkonen, 13 points behind. He has to keep winning like he did in Spa and hope for maybe some non-finishes from the McLaren drivers to claim his title. The rest of the pit lane feels it's between Hamilton and Alonso, but they're not sure who's going to claim the title or indeed why.
3 races to go. It's going to go down to the wire. I just think it's really who can keep their head under this extreme pressure and spotlight.
Each of those drivers, they don't know who's going to win the race. Sometimes Lewis is quicker than Alonso, sometimes Alonso is quicker than Lewis, and the same for Kimi as well. So that's the great thing about it. It's exciting. We haven't got a clue who's going to win.
I think the 3 races that are coming, I think 2 of them show a Ferrari advantage. 1 of them I'm not so sure, could be a bit more even. And then you get to the point, is Massa going to help Raikkonen to win the championship? It's a very interesting question. Of the McLaren drivers, I think, with the pressure on in these last few races with such a small gap between them, I think I probably favour Fernando, but it's going to be very close.
There's no question about it. It's heating up between the two McLaren guys. I mean, I can't see them both finishing the next 6 Grand Prix between the two cars, if you like, in terms of finishing normal positions and without a bit of a grazed elbows, let's say. So yeah, it's going to be really interesting. I think Kimi's sitting there to also the pounds, to be honest. I mean, if both McLarens are in the fence and Kimi's gets a win, then it's game on to him as well. So momentum's with Alonso, but momentum is with Fernando. I mean, Hamilton hasn't been able to stay within the last 2 races, and so very tight.
It's very difficult to predict. It's being probably the closest championship for a while. I think it will be very difficult for Ferrari now, for both of them, especially for Felipe, obviously. I think they're just too far ahead unless something stupid happens with Lewis and Fernando. And I would say that Alonso will make it, simply because he has been stronger in the last couple of races.
I think that the fairy tale ending that everyone would like to see, especially the British viewers, is Lewis winning the championship for McLaren, and especially with all the turmoil in McLaren right now, it appears that the relationship with Alonso is over. So I don't suppose they really want him to win. So, the dream scenario would be Lewis and a McLaren. Except if you're a Ferrari fan, and of course I think that Kimi has driven, as always, extremely well, very fast, had a lot of reliability issues at the beginning of the year. So I guess the 2 guys that probably deserve it most are either Lewis or Kimi.
common sense tells you that Alonso is the clear favourite to take this year's title, but we haven't seen a lot of common sense in Formula One this year.
And there'll be plenty of common sense from Martin Brundle in our race commentary that's coming up. Most of the pit lane feels that it's going to be Alonso. What exactly has given him the edge, do you feel, in the last 3 races?
I think it's just pure experience, Steve. He's been there before a couple of times. You know what it's like to get to the end of the championship. It's tough, it's difficult, but he knows what it's going to take to finish it off. Lewis has never had this experience before, only in lower formulas. He's now leading the Formula One World Championship, but don't underestimate Lewis Hamilton. This guy is so fixed in his mindset where he's going. And this weekend so far is going all according to plan. Raikkonen is the outside bet. He could upset everything.
Yes, most of those driver comments came before Lewis's performance in qualifying yesterday, in which he was absolutely outstanding.
You know, I have to say this is probably Lewis's best qualifying lap, his best pole position. To go out and have 1 lap in these kind of conditions and produce an outstanding, nigh-on perfect lap is so difficult. Ask any driver down this pit lane how tough that will be, and they'll all be amazed at what Lewis produced yesterday. Not a foot wrong, not a wheel wrong anywhere.
And it wasn't just a pole position, it was a big breakthrough in many ways for Lewis after what's happened over the last 3 races.
Big psychology break between him and Alonso. I'm the best man at the moment again. You'll have to stay behind me, and that's the kind of mentality he's got. And I think Alonso will have to try and rise above that again, because he will know from yesterday's performance of Lewis that he's very, very strong around here this weekend. OK,
we'll hear from the top 3 drivers in yesterday's qualifying after James Allen has taken us through the grid.
So let's take a look at the grid then for the Japanese Grand Prix at Fuji. Lewis Hamilton's 5th pole position of the year, and definitely the most important. Teammate Alonso is alongside him. 2 Ferraris make up row 2, Raikkonen ahead of Massa. Heidfeld hasn't been outside the top 10 all season, he's 5th, and it's a best of the year for Jenson Button in 6th. Webber is 7th, and Sebastian Vettel outstanding in the Toro Rosso, first time they've been in the top 10. Kubica and Fisichella make up row 5. The Renaults gambled on a dry race, looks like it won't pay off. Kovalainen in 11th, ahead of David Coulthard in 12th. Trulli and Liuzzi make up row 7. Row 8, Ralf Schumacher again off colour in the Toyota, and Nico Rosberger had to drop 10 places because he changed his engine. Barrichello and Wirtz make up row 9. Row 10, Anthony Davidson, the Super Guris not firing here, and Adrian Sutil. And at the back, 2 Japanese drivers, Sato and Yamamoto.
It's just about doing that lap which you analyse the circuit. You don't push too much that you make mistakes, but you just find your bearings, and then the next lap you know, okay, I need 5 meters later on that corner, 10 meters on that corner. Come off the brakes earlier here, take a different line there, and once you get that, then that's why when I went into the last lap, I knew, boom, 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 this is where I need to do it.
First, we need to do a good start, because in wet conditions, the difference between a good start or bad start is huge. You can lose 4 or 5 places, and in dry is much more equal. So if I do a good start, I will try in the first corner. But also I need to keep an eye with the Ferraris, that normally they do a good starts, and we need to defend position.
I'm confident that we have a good car in the race, and it's going to be, I think so, tight race between all 4 cars.
It's great to have another pole position, and especially with everything that's happening, just how close and intense the championship's getting. It's a good comeback, I think.
Fuji Speedway, 2.8 miles, a very long pit straight, just under 1 mile. Some interesting braking zones and corners in the mid part of the lap. Let's analyse Lewis Hamilton's pole position. The track is wet. He's got 1 flying lap remaining before the checkered flag drops, and he's got to get it absolutely perfect. We've just flicked up to 7th gear. He chooses to use the middle of the pit straight, and he comes to the left-hand side very late into the braking zone for turn 1, and it's difficult to choose that moment. He hits the brakes now, it goes towards the apex, the back end is dancing gently away, but he's done it beautifully. 2 is easy. 3 is at the top of this small incline. It'll be down to 4th gear, around 100 miles an hour, and be careful not to run wide through the exit. Perfect. Turns 4 and 5 then are just kings. We've got a Ferrari ahead of us, but it stays out of the way. The braking zone for 6. He ignores the racing line, goes right around the outside for better grip. Now these next curves are flat out in dry conditions, and remain so in the wet too for Hamilton and the McLaren. Now this is one of the most important decisions this lap. Where to brake for the hairpin of turn 10. He's got it absolutely right. Kisses the apex. Just leans up gently against these curves. They're gloss painted and incredibly slippery in these conditions. The unsighted right-hander, the back end of the car dancing around. He's struggling to keep it on line. Now the left-hander at the top of the hill again, difficult to spot. This time he chooses to use the racing line. Now the final turn, and it's absolutely crucial. Don't tighten up on the wheel. Squeeze the throttle pedal gently on. He's onto the pit straight. He sees a chance of a slipstream. It's Vettel in the Toro Rosso, but he's slowing down to go in the pits. We duck out from underneath him. Look at Lewis's crash helmet. He's willing the car towards that timing beam, and over we go. He looks up immediately to a diamond vision screen and sees for himself he's on pole position. What a brilliant lap.
Lewis Hamilton wasn't the only driver putting in a brilliant performance in qualifying. Jenson Button punching way above his weight. Where did you manage to get that lap from?
Out there. I love the wet. I've always loved the wet, and I think it's always good because you can sort of find new lines in the wet, and you're pushing new boundaries, really. And I think that's why I'm up in 6th, not down in 12th or 14th, where we probably would have qualified in the dry.
You're quite a smooth driver as well. Does that help you in these conditions?
I think it will in the race. You know, it's very, very wet today, but still you can damage the tyres quite a bit and get graining. So it's important not to get that because then they overheat. So I'm very, very excited about today.
How tricky is it going to be out there today in these conditions?
It's going to be very tough. You know, I don't know how they're going to start the race really because it's very, very wet. Probably be a safety car. But then it's, when does the safety car let us free, you know? Fair enough, you say we should be able to drive in these conditions, but the cars can't. You know, you aquaplane all the time. And when you're doing over, 150 mile an hour, it can be quite treacherous.
Have a good one.
Thanks.
He won't get many headlines, Mark, Jenson Button, but he's been absolutely outstanding in that car this season.
He has indeed, but I think he's getting a lot of credibility inside the paddock, and I'd actually say his stock's very high at the moment because people can see the job he's doing. But just what he was just touching on there, the possibility is that this grid will start behind the safety car. With more rain coming down now, a lot of laying water, and I also wouldn't be surprised they'd have to start on the extreme wet tyres, and that would be for the whole grid of cars.
And Jenson will be absolutely relishing those conditions. What makes him so good in the wet, and is it a quality that Lewis has as well?
I think you see it a lot in British drivers because they drive in poor conditions, mainly when they're growing up in England. But these guys, Jenson in particular, very smooth application of the throttle pedal, very smooth when he applies the brake, all important, and they just get a feel for the car and a feel for the circuit. You see Lewis on his qualifying lap, not actually touching some apexes, going out to find the grip on the circuit, and that's sensitivity, and that's something they learn when they're growing through the ranks.
Well, let's hope that Jenson gets a great result this afternoon, but it's Hamilton against Alonso that's grabbing all the headlines, of course. Is it a feud? Is it a rivalry, as many of the headlines are suggesting? And what is the relationship and the mutual respect between the two drivers, especially after that very aggressive opening lap in the Belgian Grand Prix 2 weeks ago?
Is it all just completely fair game now between you two?
Well, I didn't really push him to the wall. I gave him plenty of room. I should have pushed him in the wall. But, I gave him plenty of room, I just tried to be a fair driver, and I just trying to do the talking on the track, and do it with the results. So coming into this race, I just got to try and beat him, and that's going to hurt him more than put him in the wall, I think.
Spa is gone, and we will talk about this weekend, and we talk now about this circuit and about the low grip of the circuit. So very normal and relationship, and very good.
You said after the race you were going to be more aggressive. How's that going to sort of manifest itself? What did you mean by that?
I won't be leaving him room next time. Simple as that.
I think we will never crash into the other one. We are fighting for the World Championship, but at the same time we are intelligent people, and we try to finish the races. In any of the incidents that you can have in the start, you don't know if you will be the guy that stops in 10-1, so we cannot have that risk. So we want all to win, but we all want to cross the line at the end of the race, so this will not happen.
As Fernando has been the world champion, coming into the team, especially at the beginning of the season, he's the guy that's supposed to take them to the championship, and they've bent over backwards to make him feel comfortable. Me and Pedro have done the same. We've been told try and make Fernando feel welcome in the team. We've done that, and you saw what he did to the team. So
I think to become world champion, you need to have the full support from the team, and you know, winning our World Championship is a job that is doing from everybody, you know, from the first to the last mechanic, not only here in the tracks, also in the factories, etc. So, you know, we are lucky now that we are in front of the championship and we are fighting for winning the championship. And, you know, if we win or if we lose, will be everybody's job.
Going into these last crucial 3 races for the championship, what's your mindset? How are you fit?
Attack 110%. That's you know, going with guns blazing. I don't know, you know, no, literally just pushes and try and do the best job I can without making mistakes and scoring as many points as I can at each race.
It's a fabulous season's climax, and this graphic shows how Alonso has eaten into Hamilton's World Championship lead over the last few races. They were level after round 5 in Monaco. Hamilton did open a 14-point lead, helped by his wins in Canada and the USA. Alonso got it back to 2 after his win in Germany. Back came Hamilton to win in Hungary, but then Alonso beat him in the last 3 races, and we're down to a 2-point lead for Hamilton once again. And if car setup has been the difference over the course of the last 3 races, it's a bit of a mystery, that area of development today.
Yeah, it's going to go out the window today, Steve, because these conditions are so variable, and I think this is an important race for Lewis. If he can get out in front, gets that clean visibility, leaves the pack behind, he can really make something special out of this and get the extra 2 points out of this race just to pump along his World Championship advantage. He has to win today and has to beat Alonso.
So to sum up, is this Japanese Grand Prix in many ways a much bigger test of driver than usual?
These conditions are a bigger test of the driver. There's a lot more risk attached to it. There's a lot more concentration needed. The variation is there every single lap, and it's so easy to make a mistake. So I think, yeah, there is a lot of importance on what goes on behind the wheel, more so than in the dry.
Well, let's hope from Lewis Hamilton's point of view that these conditions help to upset Alonso's momentum. Certainly tough conditions that we've got at the Fuji Speedway today. Is the Japanese Grand Prix going to be the big turning point in the battle for the championship? Maybe we'll start to find out after the break. The Fuji Speedway, it's wet, it's very wet, and it's where this Formula One season enters its decisive phase. Lewis Hamilton's World Championship lead is down to 2 points, and he's desperate to turn pole position into race victory in this Japanese Grand Prix, for which your commentators are Martin Brundle and James Allen.
Thank you, Steve. Hello, everybody. Welcome to an extraordinary scene. The fog descends on Fuji Motor Speedway, and we're about to get a Grand Prix underway. Well, 31 years ago, here at Fuji, in similar conditions, Britain's great hope, James Hunt, started from the front row of the grid and got the job done, winning the World Championship for McLaren. Today, Lewis Hamilton walks in James Hunt's footsteps. He's gone one better by grabbing pole position. And although he can't win the world title today, victory, and especially finishing ahead of Fernando Alonso, would move him a decisive step closer to clinching the world title at his first attempt. It's all about reversing the momentum that Alonso has built up in the last 3 races, in all of which Hamilton has dropped points to the Spaniard. He's now just 2 points ahead with 3 races remaining. Well, yesterday in qualifying, he struck a decisive blow in treacherously wet conditions. The key was to get a mistake-free lap. And although Alonso set faster sector times than Hamilton during the course of the qualifying session, he didn't do it all on one lap. Whereas Lewis managed to put his best 3 sectors together, a nice clean lap, and grab pole by 7/100ths of a second. His 5th pole position of this 2007 season. But it's on days like these that things can go very badly wrong, and the form book can get thrown out of the window. We've already had 2 completely crazy races this year, in Montreal, Canada, and of course Nürburgring in Germany. And I reckon we're in for a 3rd one here. These will seem like the longest 67 laps of Lewis Hamilton's career. One man who plans to take advantage of the potential chaos and who has a lot of fuel in his car and a good wet setup in the Honda is Jenson Button. And you'll see right there, 6th on the grid, is the man who won last year in wet conditions in the Hungarian Grand Prix. And a lot of people fancy him today. If he can get a good clean start, the front runners, the front 2 rows, the 2 McLarens and the 2 Ferraris, we believe will be stopping twice and everybody possibly from Heidfeld backwards, but certainly from Button backwards, stopping just the once. Those guys can pose a serious threat to the front runners here this afternoon. Of course, we are going to start this race behind the safety car. That is an advantage for Lewis Hamilton because there'll be less of a challenge for him going into the first corner from Alonso. You can see the second half of the grid there. David Coulthard is in 12th place. I spoke to him this morning. He had various different plans in mind. Tonio Liuzzi is shown as 14th. In fact, he's going to start this race from the pit lane. Anthony Davidson down there in 19th spot. And the two Japanese drivers at the very back of the grid, Sato and Yamamoto. We may well, Martin, go 2 hours rather than 67 laps, depending how long the safety car stays out for at the start. But you need a clear head for a day like this, but you cannot avoid the kind of chaos we often see in these situations.
No, it's a day to survive, no doubt about it. Go fast, don't crash will be the final instructions they'll get. How long the safety car is out will be very pivotal to many of the drivers and teams' strategies this afternoon. The front four on the grid, at least, are relatively light on fuel as they were fighting each other for the front 2 rows yesterday. And that's very difficult for them now. They weren't able to do a few reconnaissance laps to feel how the track was because they really had to save fuel and go straight to the line. Others, those from P11 backwards, can put any amount of fuel in they want, so they can fuel longer and wonder or guess if there's going to be a safety car period to an extent, and also give themselves a much bigger window if the track ever does come to those intermediate tyres, which are much, much faster, as long as there's not too much standing water. Looking out of our commentary box window, turn 8 disappeared about 2 minutes ago in the fog. It's clear again now, so the mist and fog is drifting across the racetrack, and I think the race director Charlie Whiting will be listening to some of the drivers, talking to his safety car driver Bernd Mailander, who's also a racing driver, to get a feel for just how wet the track is. And sometimes in these conditions the safety car can be faster than the Formula One cars.
So this first Japanese Grand Prix at Fuji for 30 years, going to start behind the safety car. The last time we had a Grand Prix starting in that situation was at Brazil back in 2003, if you remember. So it's been a while since we've had such treacherous conditions, but everybody out there is a professional, particularly the safety car driver, and no one's going to take any unnecessary risks.
Tonio Liuzzi, who qualified with a dry setup yesterday, has elected to go into the pit lane, or start from the pit lane in the Toro Rosso with the full wet setup. And his teammate Vettel, who is 8th on the grid, had that wet setup. I think, James, the drivers who are going to be struggling out there are the Ferrari boys. They've got less downforce than McLaren. They had 5 kilometers an hour more straight line speed, and we've seen Ferrari off the road all through the wet practice and qualifying, and even Raikkonen going off the road on a slow lap to the grid.
We saw the sign saying pit lane open, and that's because under safety car conditions, when the green lights go on the starting gantry and the safety car drives away, the race is actually underway. So we are now counting down the laps. There is no formation lap behind the safety car, if you like. Sorry, there is no formation lap for this race. We are now under race conditions. So, as I say, the clock is counting down, and at 1 minute 58 and 45 seconds to go before the race finishes. And depending on how long this safety car stays out, I say we might actually end up hitting the 2-hour barrier, at which point the race will be finished. There is also another consideration, which is if they have to stop the race, if the rain gets very heavy later on, as long as they've done 75% of the race distance, then the drivers will be awarded full points for the race. So hopefully we won't get into any of that. Hopefully we'll be able to get a decent race going together, and everybody following behind the safety car. They've got to stay no more than 5 car lengths apart, according to the regulations. That's what it looks like in Kovalainer's cockpit. Just watch the water there. It's coming seeping down the side. It's like a miserable holiday in Scotland on a rainy day, but water pouring in down the sides and going into the back of Kovalainen's overalls.
I'm finding this difficult to believe, but apparently the Ferraris are on what I call the intermediate, the wets rather than the extreme wets. They're obviously expecting the safety car to be out a long time.
So the Cars coming across the start-finish line for a curious start to this Japanese Grand Prix. But as you say, Martin, Ferrari clearly thinking that the safety car will be out for a long time. And all the time, the driver of it, Bernd Maylander, and the experienced drivers in particular, will be communicating back to not only their own teams, but to the race control as well, giving them their impressions. You were always someone that they like to listen to in these sort of situations. And what would you be looking for?
Well, it's the standing water is the only thing. I mean, and why the drivers all look so nervous on the grid. There's an element of these conditions that you're completely out of control with it. And we've got a Ferrari off already, aquaplaning off the road. The race is underway. He won't be now allowed to repass. But if they are on those intermediate tyres, they're completely crazy. He spun off in the standing water I was just talking about. And that is the lottery of these conditions, Ted.
Yeah, but not only are they completely crazy for that reason, Martin, but also because Charlie Whiting told all the teams about 20 minutes before the start that if there is a safety car start, they have to start the race on extreme wet tyres, because he wanted to rule out any teams sort of trying to throw a crafty one and start on intermediates and gamble that the safety car is going to stay out for so long. They might as well, because it might be a dry track by then. And he said anyone who starts on anything other than extreme wet tyres will get the black and orange flag, which means effectively your car is unsafe, come into the pits.
Absolutely right. Charlie's saying, OK, if you want the safety of the safety car, that means conditions are very extreme. You've all got to run the deep groove wet. So, and also Massa has repassed the car, and I don't believe you think he's allowed to do that behind the safety car.
Yes, you are. As long as you don't get left completely behind, I think you're allowed to do that. It's interesting, Ferrari did this same thing back in Malaysia 2001, started a very, very wet race on intermediate tyres, and did the same thing. So obviously they've thrown the dice, remembering that particular incident. I think they got away with it on that occasion.
Well, they're trying to warm those intermediates up, but I think that's a staggering decision that they've taken there. And imagine when they're at speed. Okay, at speed you've got more downforce, but you can actually just fly off the road in a straight line at 150 miles an hour. And now Massa pits for presumably the full wets.
Ted Kravitz.
Yeah, it is for full wets. They've clearly been told by Charlie Whiting, no, boys, don't you try this. Come on, before I give you the black and orange, this car is dangerous flag, come in. Also, because Felipe Massa finding out there's absolutely no grip. So, well, that scuppered his race.
And his championship. He needed the other cars in front of him all not to finish and for him to win today. But from now where he is, he cannot, of course, overtake. He is now at the back of the queue for when this race starts. And with the amount of field spread we're going to get in these wet conditions and this tight, twisty rear end of the circuit as well, Massa is going to be a long, long way behind after just a handful of racing laps. So we're under the safety car. We haven't unleashed them yet here in Fuji for this Japanese Grand Prix.
The opening laps of the Japanese Grand Prix under the safety car in quite atrocious conditions. We've seen Felipe Massa have to come in for tyres. Now his Ferrari teammate Kimi Raikkonen has to do the same as the safety car prepares to get the race underway.
The lights are off on the safety car, and that means that Lewis Hamilton, the pole sitter, the 5th time of the 2007 season, is about to go racing with his teammate Fernando Alonso right behind him. Nick Heidfeld 3rd in the train. 4th is Jenson Button, who we could get a massive result here this afternoon. 5th is Mark Webber. 6th, Sebastian Vettel. 7th is Kubica. 8th, Fisichella. 9th, Kovalainen. And 10th, David Coulthard. Hamilton has allowed the safety car to pull away from him. He is going to bide his time. He is allowed to pick the moment. He's playing chicken with Alonso. You're not allowed to overtake before the start-finish line, of course. You can see Jenson Button there, 4th, has got Mark Webber nibbling at his heels. And it's a question of when does Lewis put the hammer down and what does Alonso do about it? Lewis has now gone. He's not allowed to overtake him. He's trying to force him into a mistake. A wonderful piece of gamesmanship by Lewis Hamilton. And away he goes. And now Alonso's riding his slipstream. He pulls out to have some sort of visibility as they go across the start-finish line. And we are racing at Fuji Speedway for the first time in 30 years. Lewis Hamilton leads them away. Alonso is 2nd. 3rd is Heidfeld. 4th, Button. 5th Webber, 6th Vettel, 7th Kubica and 8th Fisichella. And the run down to the first corner is a lot more simple for Hamilton than it was in Spa 2 weeks ago. Alonso is behind him. Where is the 3rd place man? Heidfeld has had a problem. Jenson Button has gone past him, so too has Mark Webber, and 3rd place man Heidfeld now gets passed by teammate Kubica, as at the front Lewis Hamilton pulls away from his teammate Alonso. We've got an accident there, and it looks like Felipe Massa in the Ferrari and Alex Wurz, who are at the back of the field, have collided.
Well, what a massive relief this is going to be for those that were getting short of fuel, that they've started the race, but already carnage then down at that first corner as they've tried to guess where the braking point is going to be. And clearly Wurz looks like he's got it wrong, gone straight into the back of Massa. He's away really from the firing line of turn 1. He's dropped it a long way before the corner and just sideswiped Massa. Surely that must have damaged the Ferrari. So Wurz lost it under braking then down into turn 1.
Lewis Hamilton leads them away. What sort of lap time does he do first time through? Well, he's the fastest of anybody on this opening lap. He's a good 6/10 faster than Alonso in the first sector and almost a second faster than him in the middle sector to open up a margin as he comes across the start-finish line over his teammate. He's done a 1:29.2. His teammate has done a 1:30.7, so a second and a half already for Lewis Hamilton over his teammate. Vettel is 3rd, 4th is Webber, who's got himself in front of Jenson Button, who was caught out, I think, behind Heidfeld when Heidfeld dropped it in the BMW. Heidfeld is now shown as being in 10th place, so a setback for Jenson Button, but not one that he can't overcome.
Yeah, well, there's the main part of the standing water, which were, as we heard from Mark Webber, out of turn 3 and after turns 8 and 9 have not been spinning the drivers off the road. They're beginning to clear that out of the way, and as long as they spread out a bit, and surely Massa's got right rear suspension damage, it just ripped the front off that Williams, and he's coasted into the pit. A puncture at least, I would have thought, but it's all falling apart for Ferrari today. And what will they be able to do with that? And he's gone straight through.
It's his drive-through. It's his drive-through penalty, of course, which he had to serve.
Yes, you're not allowed to serve it behind the safety car, are you?
Exactly. You're not allowed to serve it behind the safety car. We saw that in the Nürburgring, and he's gone straight on at turn 1. I think he's getting a little hot under the collar, Felipe Massa. He knows that his World Championship hopes, which were at best slim, are now completely going to be eradicated this afternoon. He's 20 points behind Hamilton with only 2 races to go after this one. Riding on board
Vettel's
Sebastian Vettel in 3rd place. What a great performance by him yesterday in qualifying, and now he finds himself in a wonderful position. We believe he's also fueled pretty heavy, so he's going to go further into this race than Hamilton and Alonso, and if he holds it all together, it means he'll lead this race at a certain point.
Yeah, he's 2 seconds a lap slower than the McLaren, but heavier fueled for sure, and with a full wet setup. So Vettel looking handy. Webber, we know he's been sick in his helmet, but he's holding 4th place at the moment. Button 5th, Fisichella 6th, Kovalainen 7th, Kubica 8th, Coulthard 9th, Sutil 10th now for Spiker, driving beautifully here this weekend.
Yep, Adrian Sutil, who many people, myself included, thought would shine yesterday in qualifying, couldn't get any heat into the tyres on the Spiker, and was down at the back of the grid in 20th spot. But here in these extremely wet conditions, he's managed to get himself up to 10th place, and we'll keep an eye on Adrian Sutil, the German driver in the Spiker, in 10th spot. He's now ahead of Nick Heidfeld, who was 3rd in the train behind the safety car when we had our start to this race. Hamilton has pulled out a gap of 2.2 seconds over Fernando Alonso, and they're vying for faster sector times. Alonso fastest first sector, Hamilton fastest middle sector. Here's a look what happened between Button and Heidfeld. And Button, did he lose his front wing? He's very lucky if he didn't. Yeah, he did. He's staying out in 5th place with no front wing.
How does that work? Because that's a replay of some time ago, isn't it? Of a couple of laps ago. Can't be, surely. He cannot be doing those kind of times with no front wing at all.
Yeah, well, he's doing 1:34.9s, and Hamilton's doing 1:29, so he's 5 seconds a lap slower. But, I mean, downforce is so important on a rainy day. There's a damaged front wing of Takuma Sato, 17th place man in the Super Aguri Honda. That's a slightly more of a problem because it's tucked up under the front wheels.
Yeah, and if that goes under your wheel, under braking, you just go straight to the scene of the accident. You just skid along on your own wheel. So Davidson then, was that Sato, did you say? Down, he's down in 17th at the moment. He'll pit this lap, surely. Indeed, he does. You have to be so careful. You can actually slow the car down even.
Now, this Button situation is interesting as Sato comes into the pits because he's slowing the field behind him down by 5 seconds a lap. And that means the two McLarens at the front, if he stays out there much longer, there'll be a big window for them to slot back into when they make their pit stop. They'll be monitoring this.
Jensen's only 3 seconds off the pace with no front wing, but he's just had a very poor first sector. I suspect he didn't slow down enough at the first corner and lost 4 seconds. So Button will be fighting with Fisichella and Kovalainen. We think Button's going to have to come in this lap from what is currently 5th place. Webber's passed him.
But he has done the McLarens a huge favour because he's opened the field right out. Fisichella behind him is now 25 seconds behind race leader Hamilton. Got a fire down at Super Aguri. Sato takes off with the car on fire, and it's raining hard enough to put it out probably as he comes down the pit lane. Still smoke coming off that side pod. It has gone out. So Sato rejoins the race after another drama in this oh-so-theatrical Japanese Grand Prix. Let's take another look at what happened.
Maybe the fuel flap is stuck open or something, and it was leaking fuel. So it's good thinking in a way. Where can I find some water? I know, I'll drive out onto the racetrack. Plenty out there. So providing that seals itself up, he'll be okay because it would have been a surface fire rather than anything near the wiring as Button pits. What a shame for Jensen. He was in such a great position there.
He was in a wonderful position, 4th in the train when the cars were released by the safety car. Got caught up in Heidfeldt's incident. Chance of victory gone. Still a chance of points. He'll be fueled to the finish of the race now.
Seemed to me he was part of Heidfeldt's incident. Jensen was up the inside and Heidfeldt turned in. We'll have to see it again to see if there's any blame in that. Hamilton's lead 2.6 now. McLaren probably can go within another 5 or 6 laps at least. Depends on how much fuel they saved behind the safety car. That's going to give them thick end of a pit stop in hand anyway over the rest of the field, so they're not going to struggle too much in the traffic.
Yeah, it's exactly what I was saying before, is that with Button holding up the field behind him, Fisichella is now almost half a minute behind Lewis Hamilton, who will need about 35 seconds to make a pit stop. That's how much time it'll take out of his race. So, and the same, of course, for Alonso, who's 3 seconds behind him. So that means that only Vettel and Webber will go past them. If they can stay out a few laps longer, they'll be able to pit and rejoin in front of Fisichella, which will be absolutely critical. Behind Fisichella is a big train of cars, including Kovalainen, Kubica, Coulthard and Sutil, and they won't want to come out into that lot. Here we're riding on board with Kimi Räikkönen in the Ferrari, who has managed to fight his way through to 12th place. We haven't seen much of him, but bear in mind he was 21st when they were released by the safety car.
You can't imagine how brave you have to be to stick your foot down hard when that's all you can see and you're doing 205 miles an hour. But you daren't lift off either because you'll get hit from behind. Räikkönen so nearly lost his front wing coming onto the pit straight up against Nick Heidfeld in front of him in the BMW. I can only tell you that by looking at the computer screen. We can't see enough from Räikkönen's car to know other than it's just a Formula One car. And this is Massa against Trulli. So Massa's right rear suspension didn't take a knock, it seems. Massa making his way through the field.
No, it's Räikkönen coming up on the back of Ralf Schumacher. That's the battle for 11th place. Räikkönen is trying to do here what the man he replaced at Ferrari, Michael Schumacher, did to everybody at the 96 Spanish Grand Prix, if you remember that one, where he was in a different race from everyone else. It seemed that he had a dry track and they had a wet one. At one point he was over a minute clear. It looks like Räikkönen's having one of those kind of days. He's already passed, I think, 9 or 10 cars in this Grand Prix. And remember, he's fueled to the finish.
Yeah, although he's now 43 seconds behind the McLarens, but he is bringing himself very much into play, Ted.
Just on the Ferrari, Massa does seem to be okay. They had a look at it as he served his drive-through penalty. The suspension seems to be all right. The Ferrari spokesman, Luca Colliani, has confirmed that the team just didn't know. They say they did not know that they were meant to start the race on extreme weather tyres. And, well, consider that all the rest of the teams knew. I knew. Well, draw your own conclusions.
Yeah, I knew. We all knew that. So
I think the only thing we can say without getting into an enormous amount of trouble is that Ferrari have always pushed the rules to the absolute limit, and there's another example of it. But it hasn't worked out for them so far. But I have to say that Kimi Räikkönen is driving the race of his life here. If you remember back in Japan a couple of years ago, he put in a stellar performance from the back of the field in Suzuka to win the Grand Prix, passing Fisichella on the final lap. And it looks like we're in for another one of those today from the Iceman. He's really on it in the Ferrari as Alonso goes off the racing line looking for the grip, trying to chase down his teammate Hamilton. He's maintaining the gap at just below 3 seconds. Vettel in third is 15 seconds behind, then Webber is 3 seconds behind him, and the Fisichella now critically is 32 seconds behind the race leader. Another lap or two and the McLarens will be able to pit and rejoin in front of that train of cars headed by Fisichella.
And Hamilton's pulled the lead back out to 2.8 seconds again. You have to say it was the right decision to restart the race. We've seen some incidents, but we haven't seen anybody simply aquaplaning off the road into an accident. So it's worked out for them in that respect. But Alonso very much keeping Hamilton honest, albeit 3 seconds behind. Raikkonen up to 11th now, 45 seconds behind though. So critically, the McLarens, after their pit stop, which we think is reasonably imminent, they'll still be in front of their main championship rivals.
They certainly will. Sebastian Vettel and Mark Webber in third and fourth places will go longer than the McLarens. They, like most people, decided to do a one-stop race, so they were going to carry about 7 laps more fuel, maybe more, maybe 8 or 9 laps more fuel than the McLarens, so they will go quite some way. And of course, once the McLarens come out, they'll have Vettel and Webber in front of them, and they'll have to get past them. We believe this is for Fernando Alonso. That's what we're being told from the pits. Second place man, 3 seconds behind teammate Lewis Hamilton. There is Alonso, and into the pit lane he comes. Full wet tyres, as you would imagine, going on. Still raining very hard here in Fuji. The clouds have descended, the mist has descended. In fact, I can't even see the cars driving out of turn 6, which is less than half a kilometre away from me, and they just drive out of the corner and disappear into the mist.
Yeah, Hamilton's gone fastest of anybody on that lap as Alonso pits. We can assume Hamilton will be shortly afterwards, and they'll fuel that McLaren then to the end of the Grand Prix. That's why he's waiting so long. And away he goes. Looks a neat and tidy stop. So Hamilton will push hard now. This could well be his in-lap anyway, so he should resume the lead.
And Fisichella has just gone past us in the commentary position in the Renault. There he is. So Alonso comes out behind Fisichella and into that queue of cars that I was talking about. He's behind Fisichella, Kovalainen and Kubica. Here comes Raikkonen. He's not far behind Alonso, you know.
He's past Sutil, but he's lapping at the moment Raikkonen some 4 seconds a lap slower. He's 51 seconds behind Hamilton now, so it's cost him through the traffic. But of course, he doesn't have to stop again.
No, but that looks to me like that's cost Alonso. He's come out into a great thick cloud of traffic. Hamilton had to push because he knew he needed a bigger margin over Fisichella. His margin is 36 seconds because Alonso, the first car to come in, he of course was 3 seconds behind Hamilton, so that's why it was so marginal. Hamilton should be okay here to come out certainly in front of his teammate and hopefully in front of Fisichella. Critical stop for McLaren then. Ted.
He does, yes, but of course Fisichella does still have to stop. Let's see if Lewis can hit his marks. It's a perfect stop so far from Lewis. And new wet tyres go on. They've only got 3 sets of these wet tyres, but that's a brand new set going on. Fuel to the finish, exactly like Fernando Alonso. And good work by McLaren boys. 11.6 seconds. Absolutely seamless.
Vettel has gone past. He leads the Japanese Grand Prix. Sebastian Vettel in the Toro Rosso leads. Second is Mark Webber, who has also gone through. But can Hamilton get out of front of the train of cars headed by Fisichella, who's got Alonso behind him? There goes the back marker Sato. There is the Renault, and Hamilton's done it. Of course, these cars all have to stop again, but critically for Hamilton, he's in front of them, and Alonso isn't. That's the order at the moment then. Vettel, Webber, Hamilton, Fisichella, Kovalainen, Kubica, Coulthard, Alonso, and I think Alonso will be furious.
What a difference a few seconds make. Hamilton must be 4 cars ahead of him. And of course, with this kind of visibility, that's going to make a big difference. And this is why Alonso's so far back behind that pack. He went off the road. That's a replay, went very, very wide, sort of taking the wider, supposedly grippy line in the wet, but touched the white line and went straight onto the AstroTurf. So Hamilton then will resume, not in the lead, but having got his pit stop out of the way, being so far ahead of Alonso and, of course, crucially, Raikkonen.
That has worked out absolutely beautifully for Lewis Hamilton, who now has 2 cars in front of him, Vettel and Webber, both of whom have to make their pit stops. So in terms of the challenge for the race win, they have gone away. His main challenges for the race win are Alonso and Raikkonen, who are close together on the racetrack, but critically have got 1, 2, 3, 4 cars between him and them. So long way to go yet, of course, not yet at the half distance, sorry Martin, but still it's looking good at the moment for Hamilton.
Yes, if you're joining us, if you're picking up the race, then started behind the safety car. How many laps did we have behind the safety car, James? It was 23, I believe, 23 laps. And then a lot of drivers radioing in saying it's too dangerous, we can't start the race. They allowed Antonio Liuzzi to unlap himself behind the safety car. He then put in quite a respectable lap time, and they decided then the track must be raceable, doing those kind of lap times. Many cars, many drivers had taken the gamble that the entire distance might go behind the safety car up to the 75% point, lap 47, and gambled on coming in early and filling their cars up to the very end of the Grand Prix. As we see David Coulthard there fighting with the Renault. Coulthard fighting hard, currently P7 in the Red Bull. But then there's Massa off the road yet again for Ferrari. He's had a drive-through penalty for overtaking behind the safety car, having spun behind the safety car, even at reduced speed, as did Jarno Trulli in the Toyota. That's when we heard the drivers saying, it's just too dangerous, get this stopped. That was at safety car speeds, remember, not at racing speeds. Once they released the pack, they've been, generally speaking, fine, although we've seen lots of people tripping over each other. Massa so lucky there not to lose his front wing. It's lap 31. Sebastian Vettel leads from Mark Webber and Hamilton third. Alonso's very slow on this set of tyres. He's lost a full 14 seconds now. Remember, he was 3 seconds behind Hamilton before these pit stops started. He's now 14 seconds behind him. He's made 2 errors, so 2 very bad laps, and generally he doesn't have any pace for some reason on this set of tyres. Alonso now loses out to Heidfeld. We think Heidfeld is pitting at the end of this lap. So Massa's pitted 3 times. I have a feeling, Ferrari did their drive-through behind the safety car, which doesn't count, and then had to do it again.
Yeah, you may well be right. Well, at the moment, though, Robert Kubica, who is lighter in terms of fuel than his BMW than Lewis Hamilton, is crawling all over the back of him. And he's going to be challenging Lewis fairly shortly, I think. And hopefully nothing untoward will happen. Meanwhile, Lewis Goodman. Oh, no, there is Lewis Hamilton. And there is Robert Kubica. And one of the Renaults has gone through as well. That's Hamilton off the racetrack, rejoins. Kubica's going to pass him now. Problems for Hamilton. What happened? Was it involved with that Renault, perhaps?
Well, Hamilton was ahead of Kubica last time around, but he just spun it around, I think. Did Kubica come at the McLaren and tag him? We'll have to wait for the replay. But it is for position because Hamilton stopped, Kubica hasn't. Mind that white line on the braking, on the pit lane exit there, Lewis. That will be slipperier than you could ever imagine. So trouble then for both McLarens with both BMWs giving them a hard time for pace.
I think it might be the Renault, No, it's the BMW. There you go.
Oh, look, he just ran into the side of it.
That's rude.
So at least his car seems in one piece. And Kubica's gone for the inside normal racing line and just understeered clean into Lewis, who would not have seen that one coming at all. Anti-stall kicks in, thank goodness. What sort of lap time was it? It was 7 seconds off the pace. So he can recover from that, but it's not done him any favours at all.
Well, he's lost the position to Kubica, who surely will have his collar felt by the stewards for that one. He's gaining the position that way. Meantime, Heikki Kovalainen in the Renault, who has yet to make a pit stop, is now running in second place. So the order is Webber, Kovalainen, Kubica, Hamilton.
That's Alonso.
Alonso's down in 10th place and struggling off the racetrack.
Alonso down into turn 10.
Battling Vettel.
And this is that's not the same incident. It's yet another incident down into turn 1. So Alonso then also both McLarens pointing backwards when tagging other cars. So let's see what that's done for Alonso. That was the previous lap. That was a replay from an earlier incident. Hamilton now 29 seconds away from Webber, who's leading. So Hamilton with the Renault all over the back of him, and Fisichella, who's yet to stop. The McLaren's not looking good, with a lot of full tanks of fuel on board and wet tyres.
Yeah, which presumably is a problem that many others will feel as well. Nick Heidfeld, who had that disappointing incident at the when the cars were unleashed from behind the safety car, and pits from 9th place. Mark Webber is certainly going to play himself into contention for a good result here. He's leading the race ahead of Heikki Kovalainen by 24 seconds. He's nearly half a minute ahead of Lewis Hamilton.
And here's another one, look.
There's Alonso battling with the Renaults, I believe. And through goes Vettel. That's Hamilton. Hamilton's got problems. Vettel goes through.
And Coulthard.
And Coulthard as well. So Hamilton is now in 7th place.
He must have some damage to the, maybe to his car. He's been very slow. Raikkonen's catching him too now. Lewis Hamilton, very slow at the moment. 2 cars past him on this lap. So Fisichella goes up to 4th. David Coulthard, who will be long fueled, I'd imagine, having started 12th. Webber pits from the lead for Red Bull. What is happening to Lewis Hamilton? He lost 4 seconds in the middle sector alone. Does he have a puncture? Does he have something falling off the left rear where he got whacked by Robert Kubica?
Well, the cars, the McLaren mechanics are not out in the pit lane as Hamilton goes through to complete another lap. You can see he's dropped down now to 6th place. Mark Webber makes his pit stop. Hamilton goes down the main straight as he... in front of Webber, there is Fisichella, there is Vettel, and there is Hamilton. So Webber rejoins behind Hamilton in 6th place.
But only just. Imagine how far Lewis was ahead of Webber when he pitted. Remember, it was over half a minute, wasn't it, that the 2 McLarens had. We were saying they had nearly a pit stop in hand, and somehow, somewhere, with the spins, the contact, slow lap time, and this is Hamilton going very wide through turns 5. And that's where the Renault of Fisichella passed him, and Coulthard slipped through there too somewhere. Here we go, we're on the outside. Coulthard's along the inside too, and he didn't quite take the place then. Must have happened a little bit later on.
So unless Hamilton has damage on this car, he just needs to keep a cool head now, because the cars in front of him all still have to make their pit stops. Heikki Kovalainen, who leads this race now for Renault, Giancarlo Fisichella in the 2nd Renault, and David Coulthard have still all got to pit, and that will drop them all behind Lewis Hamilton, who will then resume the race lead, provided there's no damage on his car. Here comes a hard-charging Jenson Button, trying to make up from knocking off his front wing earlier on. He's attacking Jarno Trulli. This is a battle for 19th place. Jenson Button way down the field.
Battle for Japanese honour too, with Honda versus Toyota. Makes it stick, but it's for 19th, as you say, James. At the moment, Kovalainen leads on lap 38, 7.3 seconds ahead of his teammate Fisichella. David Coulthard moves up into 3rd. Hamilton has regained reasonable lap time, but only reasonable lap time. He's 2.6 seconds ahead of Webber, who's 5th. Vettel just behind Webber, is 6th for Toro Rosso. Raikkonen, look at that, he's up to 7th, fuel to the end, and lapping well. Mind you, he's just had a scruffy lap too. So all sorts of variation going on in lap time. Very, very inconsistent.
I think what's happening here as well, if you look at it, is the cars that still have to make a stop are all lapping pretty quickly in the 1-minute 30s. Whereas Hamilton is lapping in the high 1:31s. Last lap for Raikkonen, who is also fueled to the finish, was a high 1-minute 33. What did Alonso do? A high 1:32. So it's all the cars that are light that are going quickly at the moment. Hamilton's pace seems to be the benchmark for everybody who's already made a stop. Vettel is slightly faster than him. He's 0.3 faster than him, but so he's the fastest man out there, Vettel, of the men who are fueled to the finish at the moment. That's the top 8. Alonso, a single point as things stand. Hamilton down to 4th, and still a lot of racing to go here. Still 30 laps to the finish.
Do I sense it's getting wetter out there too? We're getting more standing water now than we had before. I wonder if we're heading back towards safety car conditions. It just senses Ted's down in the pit lane. Is it still raining hard out there, Ted, or raining harder?
Yes, it's raining harder. That's the point. When they started about 5 minutes ago, it wasn't really raining at all, just a few spots here and there, but now it's pretty constant rain on the puddles that sit in the middle of the pit lane, Martin. But could that have been deliberate by McLaren? I'm in their garage and I'm watching all the people on Lewis's side who really matter, his engineers and Martin Whitmarsh and the people in the racks, and they're actually quite calm about this. Could they be saying, look boys, we're looking okay on this, we know Lewis is fueled to the end, let the people by as best you can who still have to stop again, and then we're not involved, we won't be involved in their race, and we'll carry on. But huge plumes of spray now coming up on the main straight.
Thank you, Ted. We just got a great shot of some damage on the side pod of Lewis Hamilton. I believe that was Lewis Hamilton's car. Incident involving car number 10 is under investigation by the stewards, and that, of course, is the BMW of Robert Kubica, who smashed into the side. It's in fact Alonso. We're looking at the damage on the side of his car, not Hamilton. But anyway, it's Kubica who smashed into the side of Hamilton, which is what dropped him down from what would have been the lead down to what he currently is in 4th place. So let's get this in context here. Hamilton's 4th. The 3 cars in front of him all still have to stop. If the safety car comes out, obviously before they make their stop, that will have one effect. If it comes out after they've made their stops, that will have a different effect, and it'll be a good one from Lewis Hamilton's point of view. All the cars behind Hamilton have already made their stops, and all apart from Vettel are lapping more slowly than Lewis Hamilton.
That'll have less effect in the wet than it does in the dry. You're not pulling the same lateral loads through the corners and relying so much on that downforce for Alonso, but it will not be helping his cause. That's a fact, as Kovalainen pits from the lead. Coulthard pits from 3rd place as well. Kubica gets a drive through, we think, for running into the side of Lewis Hamilton. So Fisichella takes up the lead then. Hamilton 2nd. Webber resumes, having also stopped now in 3rd.
So the pendulum swings back towards Lewis Hamilton, provided that car is not damaged after that collision by Kubica, and provided Lewis can keep it on the road, he's looking good for the victory here this afternoon if he can just keep it all together. At the moment, the crucial thing as far as he's concerned anyway is how far he is ahead of his 2 championship rivals, Fernando Alonso, who is currently in 8th place, and Kimi Räikkönen, who is currently in 7th place. Shown as 5th now.
Räikkönen struggling in this deeper water now. We know the Ferraris have got a little bit less downforce than the McLaren, and he's beginning to struggle with the aquaplaning. I think the drivers will be on the radio complaining about this anytime soon. It is getting a bit marginal now. It's lap 40. And Fisichella still leads. He's just 3 seconds ahead, though, of Hamilton as we look at the damage on Alonso's car. As I say, I don't think it will affect him too badly in these conditions. Räikkönen, we believe, is coming in for a fresh set of wet tyres. Has he worn those tyres down?
2 championship rivals. You can see the amount of water that's being moved around by the tyres as they go through it. Is much more serious than it was before. Räikkönen goes for the pit lane. Alonso goes through and picks up another place, with Coulthard having made his pit stop and Kovalainen as well. That means that Räikkönen, I believe, is up in 4th place now, depending on where Fisichella emerged. Into the pits comes Räikkönen. Alonso up into 4th place then.
Well, we thought Räikkönen could go to the end. They are putting some fuel in, so they hadn't fueled him. The refueling hose is a very long time. It's only just gone on. So the refueling hose was going on as the tyres were completely finished and ready to go. But they didn't put much fuel in when they did get it on.
That was the stop of a beaten team, I'm afraid. You could tell by the body language of all concerned. Meanwhile, at the sharp end, there is Fernando Alonso. There's the Kubica drive-through penalty being served. Robert Kubica, who had dropped down anyway to 14th place, and that will take him completely out of contention for points here this afternoon. Vettel is on for a hatful. He might even get a podium if he can keep the pace up here in the Toro Rosso.
Webber's catching Hamilton. I don't think Hamilton would have let anybody through for the hell of it just to stay out of trouble, because you do not want to be in anybody's spray, as we see Yamamoto there spinning the spiker, but Webber's catching Hamilton.
Yeah, and the Renault mechanics are out for Giancarlo Fisichella, the only car standing between Lewis Hamilton and the lead being restored to him. And it looks like the Renault guys are ready for Fisichella. He pits now. Hamilton is back in the lead of the Grand Prix. 26 laps to go as we look at a replay of the local driver Sakon Yamamoto having a spin in the spiker. Hamilton leads. Mark Webber is in second place. In third place is Sebastian Vettel in the Toro Rosso, ahead of Alonso fourth. Antonio Liuzzi, would you believe, who was last when the cars were released by the safety car on lap 19. Antonio Liuzzi is in fifth place.
Well, we think they're the guys that fueled to the end and took that gamble very early on. But Webber's within 2 seconds of Hamilton still, and pretty handy in these conditions. And they're a further about 4 seconds ahead of Vettel. And Yamamoto spun because he turned in with his right rear wheel completely on the curb. It will only ever spin. That's a McLaren in the wall.
We just saw a shot of Hamilton. I believe this is Alonso. It is one of the two main championship contenders. Fernando Alonso has hit the wall.
And that's in the middle of the track, down in
turn 6, isn't it? Just down here.
Yeah, it's down into turn 6. He's lost it coming out of 5 and hit the wall. He never approached the wall at the turning point of 6. He's gone straight in the wall. That's critical for the World Championship. And he's hit the wall very hard. He's dropped it on the exit of 5. That's what's gone on there.
Safety car has been deployed. There's a lot of debris from that McLaren scattered all over the track, but Hamilton will be getting the message as he leads this Japanese Grand Prix. 25 laps now away from scoring 10 points that would certainly move him into a very, very strong position in the World Championship, because his main rival is out of this race, Fernando Alonso. Kimi Raikkonen is still in the hunt, but he's dropped down to 12th place now after that extra pit stop in the Ferrari. And is Alonso holding his arm? Or is he just taking his gloves off? No, he's just taking his gloves off.
Now, crucial for Hamilton. That gives him a big breathing space, providing he scores points today over Alonso going into those last 2 races. But we're 5 laps away from this reaching 75% distance, which is quite often a crucial point if they do want. That's a big accident. If they do want to abandon the race. But yeah, he's aquaplaned on the exit of turn 5, and just let's see if we're going to get a replay of the early part of that. But probably still doing 140, 150 miles an hour. And of course, the retardation would be virtually 0 in these conditions when you're traveling sideways and backwards.
I just clear one little thing up. 75% of 67 laps is 51 laps.
Sorry, my maths is not good there.
It's still got a way to go. 9 laps to go for Hamilton before he'll get maximum points from this race. But whatever happens, if he finishes it as the very jumpy looking Ron Dennis takes a big swig of water, if he finishes this one, Hamilton is definitely going to extend his lead over Alonso, and whatever happens, he's going to leave here still leading the championship over the Spaniard. Well, it's been an extraordinary first 43 laps here in Fuji, and the closing stages are upon us. We're behind the safety car for the 2nd time in this Grand Prix. As we take another look at that huge incident, Fernando Alonso hitting the wall on the run down to turn 6, which is just below our commentary position. It's just the other side of the main straight. Hamilton leads then. Webber and Vettel, an unlikely pairing in the podium positions at the moment.
Webber's off.
Webber's off into the wall. I can't believe it.
He's aquaplaned off. Maybe he's just tried to warm his tyres up or something. Did he get anywhere near Hamilton when they were busy warming tyres or moving around the track? But somehow or other, Mark Webber, behind the safety car, has gone off far enough to hit the wall.
Vettel is now 2nd then. The 20-year-old Sebastian Vettel takes up 2nd place, with Webber having gone off into the wall.
Well, let's wait and see he hasn't just parked it. Let's wait and see he hasn't just had a problem. And where are we? Yeah, he's spun it.
Oh, Vettel has been hit.
He's been hit by Vettel big time. Vettel is out as well. Vettel has just run. Oh, the Toro Rosso hits the sister car Red Bull. Vettel has run into the back of Mark Webber while they've been warming tyres and brakes.
I can't believe it. It was headed for a fairy tale for Webber and Vettel. And I guess the guy who owns the Red Bull teams, both of them, Dietrich Mateschitz, will be watching this in Austria and will be throwing something very large and heavy at his TV screen, because he was looking at a double podium here. Engine switched off. Toro Rosso are furious. And I was just saying how high Sebastian Vettel's stock must have got. It just went down like Northern Rockstock did in the last
Wow.
two.
What are they doing? I mean, visibility's poor, but I suspect what happened is Webber was just warming his brakes as Vettel was warming his rear tyres, and they met in the middle. That puts Kovalainen up to second. Massa for Ferrari third, despite 3 pit stops, one of which was a drive-through. Coulthard then is fourth. Fisichella fifth, Heidfeld sixth, Raikkonen seventh, having made a bit of a surprise extra pit stop too. He's been in 3 times. Barrichello up to 8 for Honda. But how extraordinary. I wonder if we'll see another shot of that. But it looks as if it was brain fade.
So Hamilton, the 47th lap of this Japanese Grand Prix. I think if you're a Japanese race fan, you not only need a lot of endurance and a lot of stamina, but you also need a very good set of waterproofs, because it quite often rains over here. And the crowd that has turned up here this afternoon, a very healthy crowd it is too, has seen a truly astonishing Japanese Grand Prix, and it's not over yet. Cars maintaining a distance from each other, and it's when they try and warm the tyres up as Kovalainen pushes Hamilton, gets up alongside him. That's the fastest lap classification in this race. 1:28 was the fastest we got to at one stage, and clearly it's that was when it was the rain was at its lightest. It started to rain pretty heavily about 10 minutes ago, and the safety car is coming in this lap, and there is Vettel crying his eyes out in the pit box, and who can blame him? It looks very much like his mistake that smashed into the back of Webber.
Of all the cars to hit as well, it's his boss's other team. Now, I think I'd be more nervous now than any other time this afternoon if I was driving. This restart is going to be tricky. The start-finish line is a long way down the pit straight. It must be a third of a mile down there. You cannot overtake until you pass that line. We've seen Hamilton, he likes to back them all up, slow them all down, try and surprise them. I think he rather overdid it last time, if I'm honest. But there's no point playing games today. He's just simply got to get on with it. They're not allowed to overtake him anyway until they've passed the start-finish line.
Heikki Kovalainen then in the Renault, looking at his best result in Formula One if he can stay where he is, but he's got to worry about Felipe Massa's Ferrari behind him as Hamilton gets up alongside the safety car. Kovalainen, though, will also be conscious of the fact that he does not want to interfere in the World Championship situation, and any kind of collision with Lewis Hamilton at the restart would be very much doing that. Remember, you're not allowed to overtake until you've crossed the start-finish line, which, as Martin just said, is a long way down the pit straight. Hamilton bunches the pack up now. The second time he's done that in this Grand Prix. We're about to go green. With 20 laps remaining.
Magical mystery tour this first lap will be. Where will you choose your braking point for turn 1? It's still raining like crazy out there. The standing water will be deeper than before, and they're still busy just shaping up for that start. Hamilton backing them all up, then now he'll let it go.
Well, he was entitled to do that, and he got the drop coming out of the corner, got the car nice and straight before he hit the hammer. He goes across the start-finish line. He's got 19 laps separating himself from the end of this Japanese Grand Prix as Massa has a look up the inside of Kovalainen, and it looks like he's going to keep on coming as we go into the first corner. Massa, he's tucked in behind Kovalainen now, who picks his braking point neatly for the first corner. Hamilton leads. Second is Kovalainen, third is Massa, fourth is David Coulthard, fifth is Giancarlo Fisichella, then it's Heidfeld, Raikkonen seventh, and eighth Barrichello.
If you ever thought Grand Prix drivers were overpaid, change your mind right now. This is supreme sporting skill and bravery going on here this afternoon. 205 miles an hour. Cannot even see your own dashboard. All of your sensors are in hyper mode. Your eyes are on stalks. You're listening for when the guy in front lifts the throttle pedal as Ralf Schumacher exits the pits for Toyota. And Hamilton then leads Kovalainen, Massa. Wirtz is off the road for Williams. It's Rosberg, sorry. Wirtz is out of the Grand Prix. It's Rosberg dropping to the back of the field. Massa third, Coulthard fourth.
Yeah, Jenson Button, who had a good chance here this afternoon, was fourth in the train of cars when the safety car released them on lap 19 after that safety car start. Of course, he got knocked his front wing off. That dropped into the back of the field, and Jenson has fought his way back up into 12th place now. David Coulthard is fourth, and Anthony Davidson in the Super Aguri is down in 17th place, just ahead of teammate Takuma Sato.
It seems to me as if Rosberg's car's just misfiring rather than anything else. And probably some water in the electrics or something like that. It was just spluttering along, wasn't it? And Rosberg showing as having stopped in the first sector, but he's now creeping around, we think, back to the pits. Can be critical times. And Massa's fallen away from Kovalainen. Coulthard a further 2 seconds now. That's just about the visibility distance, isn't it? They're all about a couple of seconds adrift.
Well, is it about being bold now, or is it about seeing it through to the finish? If you're Raikkonen in 5th place with David Coulthard in front of you, you might fancy a go, because there is a World Championship at stake here, and he really has nothing to lose. But Kovalainen in 2nd place, Massa in 3rd place, and David Coulthard in 4th place will be assessing the conditions, looking at the cars around them to see whether they think they might be able to improve on those positions at all. Lewis Hamilton out the front is lapping 2 seconds a lap faster than Kovalainen behind him.
Yeah, 5 or 6 seconds a lap faster than the rest of the field, who are bound up in the spray. So Hamilton in exactly the right place as the two spikers are having a good race for P11 with Yamamoto ahead of Sutil. The Japanese are very, very good in the rain. As you said, they're so used. Normally, they have these very deep groove tyres that suit these conditions. We had them in Formula One for a while, called them the Typhoon tyres. But actually, they never got used because whenever the water was deep enough to use them, we were behind a safety car anyway, so they became pointless.
Rosberg pits. He is down in 17th place. Bridgestone, who's the sole tyre supplier in Formula One, bring plenty of sets of these wet tyres to every Grand Prix, and they hardly ever get used. They get moved all over the world, but here today they certainly have been put into use as Hamilton clears Rosberg.
I noticed that when I voiced over his qualifying lap, his pole position lap, Hamilton goes right down the middle of the pit straight, staying away from all of the grid hatchings. And he obviously finds, he's found a bit of extra grip and confidence as he approaches turn 1 there.
I guess it's the crown of the road as well, isn't it, probably?
Could be crown. Normally a racetrack tends to camber one way or the other rather than have a crown. But whatever it is, Hamilton takes a very specific route along that almost 1 mile straight.
Well, let's follow him then and just look at what he's doing and enjoy it with him. It's a nice look when he looks in the mirrors. He sees spray, but at the moment he's not seen too many racing cars because Kovalainen is 4.5 seconds behind him.
Challenging conditions, and you just wonder what experience Hamilton's got to draw on here. He doesn't have any experience to pull from in these kind of challenges and demands.
Not in a Formula One car, that's for sure. I spoke to him this morning, and he was saying that apart from the Nürburgring, that's the only time he's driven. It's the first time he's ever driven a Formula One car in wet conditions, and what a testing day this is.
At the moment, David Coulthard driving beautifully on the same pace as leader Hamilton at the moment, very much holding his own there in 4th place. Sandwich between the two Ferraris, and Massa's still very close to Kovalainen too. I think David Coulthard's sitting there thinking, I actually fancy a piece of the podium. Look, Raikkonen's gone right round the outside of 5 this time though. It's where he was quicker last time, and completely surprised Coulthard there by just finding that grip around the outside. Now he brings himself into play.
And Coulthard has just set his fastest lap of the Grand Prix so far. David Coulthard, who's racing today in slightly different helmet colours. You can't really tell because the conditions are so bad, but he is actually wearing the helmet colours of Colin McRae, his great friend, the former World Rally champion, who was killed in a helicopter crash a couple of weeks ago. And that's David Coulthard's tribute to him as the Ferrari snakes under acceleration. And Kimi Raikkonen now sets off after his teammate. Raikkonen up into 4th then, Massa in 3rd.
Raikkonen could get a 2nd place here, yeah. Him and Coulthard were only 2.5 seconds behind Kovalainen and Massa. So it's all to play for, isn't it? 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th there. Now look at this in the back of your picture. Raikkonen's found some confidence and grip. He tried it on the previous lap, didn't quite work. He sort of was lining himself up and completely drove around the outside there and surprised David under braking into 6.
Great driving by Kimi Raikkonen. I mentioned before that wonderful charge he put on at Suzuka to win a couple of years ago. And we're seeing another one here this afternoon. It's been interrupted by safety cars, but he really was on it from the moment the cars were released by that initial safety car.
Oh, he's off.
On lap 18, he's gone off the
Raikkonen's
racetrack.
wide. And that's where he passed Coulthard last time around. Gone very, very wide. But in this day and age, there's no gravel traps. There's simply tarmac aprons, and he's straight. Almost looked like he found more grip out there. Might try that one again. Raikkonen pushing to the extreme. World Championship at stake, really. He wants that second place.
Well, he tucks in, he's closing back up.
He's not lost anything, has he?
He's closing back up on Massa. It gives you an indication of just how hard Raikkonen is pushing, just how much grip he seems to be finding in comparison to the cars around him. All about feeling the car moving underneath you and knowing where the limit is in all kinds of different conditions. The rain falling very heavily here now in the closing stages at Fuji. And you'll have noticed at the top of your screens that instead of having a lap counter, we've now got a time counter, because we've got... we're only on lap 59 of 77, but we aren't going to complete the full distance. We're going to 67, sorry.
Massa is in, and what on earth can that be for? Why does he need new tyres? With it lets Raikkonen pass, but it lets several other people past as well. Ted's down there.
He needs new tyres, and he needs fuel as well. So they didn't fuel Felipe Massa towards the end earlier on in the race. Another why did they do that moment in the history of Ferrari at the Japanese Grand Prix 2007. But the new full wet tyres, and he's back out again.
That's his fourth stop, I believe. Yes, it is. Fourth time through, including, I think he actually has been through at least once for a drive-through, and maybe even twice when he wasn't allowed to. But they'll be wondering where Ross Brawn is right now. If he's on a beach somewhere, because they could do with him on the pit wall. Ferrari have had a poor afternoon.
They've had a mare, as you say in football. He's down in 9th place now, Felipe Massa. They have, of course, won the Constructors' Championship by virtue of McLaren being excluded from it just before the Belgian Grand Prix, if you remember, a couple of weeks ago. So whatever happens, they walk away with one championship this year, but their chances of the drivers' one receded a little bit, although Raikkonen is now in 3rd place here. Hamilton leads. Kovalainen is 11 seconds behind him. In 3rd place is Raikkonen, just 3 seconds behind his fellow Finn. And then Coulthard, who was passed by Raikkonen a few laps ago, drops to 4th. Massa drops down to 9th. That means that Fisichella moves up into 5th spot, with Heidfeld just behind him.
Just one moment of aquaplane, just one moment when those tyres cannot clear enough water and leave contact with the tarmac, and the driver is nothing more than a passenger, even with the supreme skills of Lewis Hamilton and all of the track knowledge he's got. The track is a living thing today. It's a moving thing with this amount of rain. It's every time you come around the 2.8 miles, it's changed slightly when it's raining this heavily. And where you could brake before, or where you could stay full throttle before, may not be the case any longer. And that's where the lottery comes in, and that's where the bravery comes in. We're now into lap 65. Hamilton's lead, 14.3 seconds. He's backed off a bit now. He's now lapping and just measuring himself against the drivers behind him and minding himself. But Coulthard staying ahead of Fisichella. Fisichella 5th, Heidfeld 6th, Kubica 7th, Massa 8th. There's no real squabbles going on.
There's the graphic of who's improved off the grid. Kovalainen has made up 9 places to be second. David Coulthard using that wise old head to get himself up into 4th place. Fisichella has done well today as well. Kubica has made up a bit of ground. Massa has lost a lot of ground. Sutil has had a fine day. Look at that, making up 11 places. Not enough to get himself a point as things stand. And poor old Jenson Button, a big loser, of course, having his front wing knocked off at the start. And that took away any chance of a podium here today. But Button would definitely have been a big factor, and certainly could have finished second behind Hamilton today had he not knocked his front wing off at the start. Well, we saw Sebastian Vettel crying his eyes out, having made a terrible mistake, smashed into the back of Mark Webber, costing both of them a podium. The 20-year-old is now talking to Louise Goodman.
Exactly.
Well, I mean...
Oh, well.
Bit of water in the systems there, a bit of a misfire going on for Louise. We'll try and get back to her. I'm desperate to know what Sebastian Vettel's got to say about that one. Hamilton's now on lap 66. There's 2 minutes 17 seconds to go. Heidfeld's misfiring as well, lapping slowly in 6th, with Kubica just about. Yeah, Kubica closing in 6 seconds on this lap already. So Heidfeld looks like he might drop back just near the end of the Grand Prix. Raikkonen still chasing Kovalainen for all he's worth. What a brave driver has been by Raikkonen. He's had so many challenges this afternoon, so many moments off the road, and still he's going for it.
Yeah, he came from the very back of the field, remember? When they went out initially on the wrong tyre, the Ferraris had to pit for the extreme wet. He was 21st at one stage of this Grand Prix, and Kimi Raikkonen is now fighting for 2nd place.
Heidfeld crawling down the pit straight here. His engine sounding particularly sick. Raikkonen's found himself some interesting lines, particularly that turn 5, where Alonso crashed, but where he passed Coulthard. There is your race leader, Lewis Hamilton, maintaining 13 seconds lead.
And he's about to start his last lap here at Fuji Motor Speedway. He is 2.85 miles away from the checkered flag as Nick Heidfeld retires the BMW from 8th place. And that moves Tonio Liuzzi in the Toro Rosso into their first point scoring position of 2007. They're going to get 1 point here this afternoon. But there is your race leader, Lewis Hamilton. The crowd here are on their feet. They've seen an absolutely scintillating race here. And Hamilton has driven amazingly well. It's not just about not making mistakes on the part of the driver. It's, as Martin said, it's about not hitting a puddle when you're just a passenger. And even nothing you could do would stop you from sliding off the road. And if you can keep your head while all those around you are losing theirs, then you will take a giant step towards the World Championship. Hamilton then halfway around the lap. He's just gone through the corner where his teammate, the reigning world champion, Fernando Alonso, crashed earlier in the Grand Prix, taking himself out of contention. He will score nothing today. Hamilton is half a lap away from 10 points, and Raikkonen wants 2 extra points for 2nd place. He's really taking it to Heikki Kovalainen in the final lap here.
That's incredible from Raikkonen. He will not give in what surely is virtually impossible conditions in the spray behind that Renault. But it's Hamilton then. What an incredible drive. If he wins the World Championship this year, he fully deserves it, just on the back of this afternoon.
He has made no mistakes. It has been one of the most difficult and treacherous Grand Prix in the history of Formula One racing. And with a single mighty blow, he halts Alonso's charge. His World Championship is now within reach. That was the drive of a champion. Lewis Hamilton wins the Japanese Grand Prix. He takes the 10 points and an enormous lead into the final 2 races. And what an absolutely sensational performance from this 22-year-old. Meanwhile, Raikkonen, and there's Massa, we're on board with him, battling with Kubica over 6th place. Kovalainen has finished 2nd, Raikkonen is 3rd. Kubica and Massa are battling here. Massa has taken the place away from Kubica. And in the very corner where Kubica hit Lewis Hamilton, Kovalainen 2nd, then Raikkonen 3rd. David Coulthard's 4th. And who's going to win out of these 2?
It's got all the hallmarks of Dijon so many decades ago, but it's Massa who's come out in front. What an extraordinary few corners as they were trading literally blows towards the end of the race, and it's Massa who takes 6th. Maybe the stewards will be having a look at that, but it looked pretty much 50-50 in terms of who was dishing it out there. Massa then storms through, 4 stops for him, but 6th place. Button didn't make the line. He was 10th and has stopped on the last lap.
Tonio Liuzzi picks up the final point for Toro Rosso. That's their first of this season for him. And he was dead last, of course, at the very start. But what an absolutely scintillating performance by Lewis Hamilton. We're riding on board with Heikki Kovalainen, who's delighted with his and Renault's first podium of 2007. There is a very, very emotional Ron Dennis. Well, I said he was walking in the footsteps of James Hunt, who came here in '76.
Okay, guys, Lewis, just be careful. There are cars stopping around the circuit, various activities on the last lap. Just be careful.
Fantastic job, guys. Really fantastic. I'm so pleased with all of you. Done a fantastic job. Let's take it to the next race.
Tremendous job, Lewis. So, Lewis, I reckon we can now say we've ticked off driving in the wet then.
Yeah, well, that was Lewis's engineers on the radio to him. Ron, what were your words to Lewis?
very good.
What was the key to victory today?
Just discipline. I mean, the opening laps, you know, you had to think, do we take a chance, feel for the end, and we just worked everything out. I mean, engineers, strategists, everybody worked so well, and Lewis just did what he had to do when he had to do it, and you know, we had to look after the tyres because we were on one-stop strategy after the first round, so challenging race.
And as far as the championship goes, with Fernando not scoring today?
Fernando did a very good job, you know. I don't know, I think they collided with a map marker initially and damaged his car. He was really keeping it together, and I was bitterly disappointed that he didn't finish, honestly. And the thing to do is realise it's still a long way to go, 2 races, but it's going well.
Okay, very well done, Ron. Of course, James Ron won't be allowed onto the podium as part of their penalty for the recent spying row.
Great victory then for Lewis Hamilton. It takes him through the 100-point barrier. One of only 7 drivers to do that in the history of Formula One as well.
I forgot I was commenting. I was sitting down and I started applauding him up on the podium. It was just an awesome drive.
And well done, Heikki Kovalainen. One of the great stories of 2007 is the way he's turned his season around after the things that were being said about him earlier in the year, that he might even be replaced at Renault. He's had such a strong second half of the year, and this guy has underlined his credentials as well. What a sensational performance by Kimi Räikkönen.
Very brave, wasn't it? He was not going to give up. Only one national anthem, of course, British driver, British team.
So James Hunt said to Dickie Davies he was going to get drunk after he won here in 1976. Lewis Hamilton still has work to do in this World Championship. He's proved today he doesn't do easy wins. He's survived all the scares. He takes a 12-point lead into the final 2 races. Don't miss them.
Concentration, and really, I'm really proud of myself that I was able to keep the car on the track and not make mistakes. And you know, regardless of the crash that we had and all the safety cars that we had, just really happy and also happy for the team. You know, they're doing a fantastic job. The
crisis came mid-race when you came together with Robert Kubica. Did you think it was all over at that point?
I never think it's all over. I always, it's never over until the car stops and or you see the checkered flag, and so you just keep on pushing. You got to stay focused, stay relaxed, and I was very relaxed. I wasn't angry at him or anything. I was just, you know, it was a bit of a pointless crash that we just had. You know, could have lost me the whole race, but all I need to do is finish. So these guys can go past if they want and go as fast as they want. I just need to keep the car on the track.
You can clinch it in China. How close does this World Championship title feel now?
It feels within reach, but you know, I'm not really focused on it still. I just try to continue to enjoy it, and you know, which I am. Today was a really cool race, even though it was wet. It was very long, a bit too long, and I'm not looking forward to watching the replay. I actually will watch the short version of your replay, but it was, you know, going into China. I've never been there before. Just have to be focused again. So get a good night's sleep tonight and make sure I come back next weekend.
We'll make sure you get a look at all our highlights. Well done today. We'll enjoy a look right now at that World Championship table. And And there it is, Lewis Hamilton's 12-point lead, meaning that if Hamilton finishes ahead of Alonso and Raikkonen in China, the title is his with one race to go. But I suppose you have to assume it's still likely to go down to the final race in Brazil. Lewis on 107 points, Alonso now 12 behind, Raikkonen 17 behind, China and Brazil to come. But Mark, you have to say he looked every inch the world champion today.
He did indeed, outstanding performance, and I think Alonso recognised that today, and I think everybody else down the pit lane has actually said what an outstanding job he also has done. I can't see him not losing his championship, but you never know with Formula One.
The quality that impressed you most, I'm sure, was his concentration. Had one piece of good fortune that he was able to survive that coming together with Robert Kubica.
You know, very lucky indeed, because that could have been a tragic event for him in terms of losing out on this Grand Prix win. Kubica came up the inside, Lewis Hamilton was on the outside. They were both trying to get the level of grip what was available. And Lewis, I think, you know, didn't do any wrong here. This is my opinion. I think he was the leading car. He was taking the line where he felt was best. And Kubica just climbed up on the inside of him. Didn't cost Lewis his race, but it could well have done.
He was off the pace then for a lap or two. I suppose you have to sort of regroup after a moment like that.
Definitely. I think you just got to get composure, try and find yourself, you know, find your feet again and get your rhythm back again. Very important in these conditions.
But Alonso never really found his rhythm. He was making mistakes like he was maybe half a dozen races ago. Big one at turn 5.
He was indeed, and he just got clipped here by one of the Toro Rossos. Made a lot of mistakes, and that was the big difference between him and Lewis Hamilton today. The biggest mistake was this one. He lost the rear of the car, hit the barrier. Very big accident, actually. Quite lucky that he didn't get hurt. But, you know, this has cost him, I think, his World Championship run.
Raikkonen just won't disappear in terms of his World Championship challenge. He was outstanding today.
He was fantastic, considering he came from the back of the grid. He's been into the pits 3 times. What a guy in terms of pushing. I mean, sometimes he was off the circuit more than on it. It didn't seem to hamper his forward motion, but definitely I think he was an outstanding driver today.
And the Lewis Hamilton celebrations. I mean, he knows how close this World Championship title is now.
He can see that the end is getting very close, and 12 points advantage over Alonso now. He actually has a whole Grand Prix in hand, even if something does go wrong. Fingers crossed it won't. But what a great performance today. Fantastic achievement for a young man.
Well, the title is close. Let's get some more driver reaction, first of all, from the man whose championship ambitions are slightly starting to fade. Lewis celebrates, but the world champion Fernando Alonso, well, he struggled today.
Obviously, this victory has given him quite a substantial lead in the championship. Is it over for you now?
Well, it's not over because mathematically you have to be over, but no doubts that I need a very unlucky weekend for him. You know, I need a retirement from Luis with a mechanical problem or something to have a chance to win. If the races are completely normal, it's over.
Today in these tricky conditions, our strategy was fantastic. The extreme wet tires worked really, really well, and the engineers and mechanics, everybody did a really good job today to put it all together, and it means a lot for us. It gives us a bit of a kick, for the end of the year and beginning of next year.
The car was good, but the problem when you're behind everybody, you cannot see anything 50 meters in front of you. It's nothing, and you just hope that there is nothing stopped or slowing down. But it takes so long time to get past people, and it was a bit tricky. But okay, the third place, looking where we needed to start after the first few laps, it's okay. But this is not enough for the championship.
I think it's time now for you and Kimi to concede that the driver's title is beyond the reach of both of you.
I think so. For me, it's finished. For Kimi, it's almost. So it will be definitely very difficult for us. But I'm quite happy with the championship. Very happy, very competitive from the beginning to the end. And unfortunately, we didn't have a reliable car enough to finish every races. I was maybe a little bit unlucky as well.
It was always going to be difficult, but these conditions were crazy, and people will say, I'm sure, you've got wet tyres, put up with it, but that wasn't wet racing. There were rivers on the circuit, and you spend half of the straight aquaplaning. You're not in control of the car, and when you're doing 150, 160 miles an hour, that's not normal. And for me, it was too wet, and it shouldn't really have been started.
In the end, we cannot rewind, so it's a bit of a shame because obviously it was a fantastic race until that stage, and was very good for the team, for me. Of course, I'm disappointed with myself.
And Vettel, as they say, will have learned from this. But next weekend, we're on a similar schedule for what could be an absolutely historic Chinese Grand Prix at Shanghai. Qualifying live on Saturday morning ITV3, repeated at 11:40 ITV1. And then the race live at 6 o'clock on Sunday morning, repeated at 11:30. But this afternoon, the Rugby World Cup is set to continue. 3 more of the final group games. France-Georgia at 1:30. The big match for Ireland against Argentina at 3:45. South Africa-USA, 6:30 ITV4. And a quick reminder of Champions League football on Tuesday. Manchester United-Roma, huge game at Old Trafford on ITV1. Arsenal at Steaua Bucharest, 7:30 ITV4. But that's it from Japan, and Formula One now heads from Japan to Shanghai with history beckoning. If Lewis Hamilton finishes ahead of Alonso and Raikkonen, then he's world champion in his rookie year. Make sure you're with us next weekend. Bye-bye for now.